Okay, it was approximately 3 a.m. When I got a phone call, woke me up from my boss, Lieutenant John Rogers, and he simply said that you have a double. That means we have a double homicide. Said it was in the West LA area. I've been doing this for a number of years. I'm kind of used to it. We don't ask a lot of questions in that initial call. We just get an address and we respond. And so that's what happened here. I got the address in West LA and I got up, got dressed, and I was out the door probably in less than 15 minutes. Usually grab something to eat on the way, an apple or something else, piece of fruit, coffee if I have time. And I got on the freeway and went down to over the West LA area to the address given to me on Bundy Drive. Yeah, I was not all that familiar with the West LA area. That particular area doesn't have a whole lot of crime. And to get a double homicide there was kind of unusual. But I pulled up, and there's the front of Bundy, and so the officers that first arrived had the scene secured. They had Bundy blocked off. They had the rear alley behind the location blocked off. They had extended out the crime scene, which was good. At a crime scene, you want take as much space as you can get because you don't really know how much you're going to have that's involved with the crime initially, so you want as much as you can get. The concern became Bundy Drive is the main thoroughfare between San Vicente and Wilshire Boulevard, and we were concerned with Monday morning traffic because it was very busy during the weekdays, people coming and going to work and whatnot. So we knew that in 2 to 3 hours, we would either have to open up Bundy or keep it closed. If we kept it closed, then people would know something was going on that would attract the media. The last thing you want at a crime scene investigation is to be mobbed by media, especially with a double homicide. It's going to interfere with you one way or the other, sooner or later. So we had to make a decision whether or not to open up Bundy, as well as the alley behind the location, because of the traffic concerns. I had parked my car and was met there by the West LA homicide detectives, and my partner, Phil Vannatter, had also arrived earlier. I was given a brief rundown on what was going on. In fact, the two people apparently had been knifed to death. They were lying in the front of the location on Bundy. One was either the estranged or current wife of O.J. Simpson. The other man was unidentified. I was given a walkthrough, which is normally what happens at a crime scene when the investigator who's going to take over the case shows up. He's given this little oral debriefing and then given a brief walkthrough. Well, the walkthrough would include being directed to evidence as well as the bodies at a crime scene and basically what they have to that date, to that moment in time. At a crime scene, bodies are evidence also. Sometimes it's a little hard for people to understand that people who are murdered are now, unfortunately, they are no longer people. They're considered evidence, and so you have to treat them as such. We were given this, my partner and I were given this walkthrough with the West LA detectives, and different things that were pointed out to us. A blood trail was observed adjacent to bloody footwear impressions. It appeared to be blood on the footwear impressions, leading from the bodies off to the west, up the stairs, past the front open door of the location, which was well lit inside. The footwear impressions went to the walkway all the way to the alley to the rear. And it went through a gate that emptied out onto the alleyway in the back. There were obviously things of evidentiary value in addition to the blood around the bodies. We saw an envelope, a white envelope, that appeared to have a pair of prescription glasses in it between the two bodies. There was a pager near the male victim. Blood was splattered in all different directions. There was a blue Navy knit cap on the ground right near the envelope. There was also a glove, a left-handed leather glove lying on the ground between the two bodies. So what you do is you take this in and then decide what you're going to do as far as handling this particular crime scene investigation. The first problem, again, was securing the crime scene. If we had left the crime scene secured and Bundy Drive secured, again, we would have a lot of unwanted attention. So we opened up part of that briefly after the sun had come up. In the meantime, the word had gotten out and the press was starting to show up, and they were actually setting up their cameras across the street on the east side of Bundy on a little hill that overlooked down on top of the crime scene. And it was like 115 feet away, a little too close for comfort. You don't want evidence of the crime scene photographed by the media or anyone else before you find out what you have and before you can do anything with it. It could compromise your investigation. That became a concern. Coroner was given what we call a first call. We said what we had. There's going to be a media situation, so prepare for this. In other words, when we call you the second time, you'll know what we have and how to roll on it. Because the coroner, when they arrive at a murder scene, they actually conduct their own investigation independent of ours also, with us in attendance. So you have the police doing their investigation, the coroner doing their investigation. Their investigation primarily involves the bodies and anything that's on the bodies, any evidence that may be on the bodies, any weapons that may be under the bodies or hold on to by one of the victims. This is the coroner's responsibility. But we knew from the get-go that we were going to be there a while. So security became paramount. We were shortly informed that the woman who had been killed, and she was nearly decapitated when I looked at her, a vicious killing. There were other slash wounds. It looked to be something personal. This was just not a narcotics deal gone wrong. This was not a situation where someone was being robbed. This happened rather late on a Sunday night. We wanted to look for witnesses first, so we had already sent some people door knocking around the neighborhood to see if we could find any of that. But we were also informed that O.J. Simpson himself was, again, either married to or estranged from the woman. And we wanted him to be notified, and we were told that he only lived a couple, 3 miles from the location. Come to find out, it was only 2 miles away as a crow flies. There was a commander at the scene who made a decision that he should be contacted as soon as possible, because I was also informed that there were 2 young children who were removed from upstairs by the responding officers once the house had been cleared. And they were now at the West Los Angeles station. They were very young children. We needed to contact him or a family member to tell them what had occurred and to take care of the kids, frankly. So the commander had suggested that we go up. Didn't suggest, he actually ordered us to go up with the 2 other detectives to try to locate O.J. Simpson at his Rockingham estate, which again was just 2 miles away. At this time, traffic was starting to build. The media was setting up more cameras. We knew that the media has a lot of contacts. They have a lot of people they can control. They have a lot of information they can obtain that as far as victims go and as far as victims' relatives go. So we had to assume that they would probably know who O.J. Simpson was. So we wanted to get to Rockingham first to contact him and let him know what was going on. And as far as his children, we had his children in custody at the station. And the woman there, again, was either estranged or related to him in some fashion. So we left for Rockingham. We had two cars. Vannatter and I were in one car. Furman and his supervisor, Ron Phillips, were in the other car. The plan was to contact Simpson and leave Furman and Phillips with Simpson, assist him, make the death notification, assist him in getting his children back, stay with him because obviously he would be very upset when he found out what had occurred, especially to his estranged wife, or maybe they were still married, we didn't know, and the children. So the one unit would stay with them. Meanwhile, Phil and I would return to the crime scene and conduct a crime scene investigation. There were two cars in the driveway. There was a light on, appeared to be one light on inside. And the gates were secured. The Rockingham gate was secured. There is a white Bronco parked outside the Rockingham gate, parked up over the curb, that is not normally used for parking cars, it wouldn't look like, because of the curbing and everything else. And again, it's a very narrow street. Rockingham is narrow, driving up the street. The car is parked slightly askew, as if someone who parked it there might have been in a hurry. Supposition to say they were. While we're looking at the Bronco, there's a white wooden stick. I find it's in the parkway by the Bronco. It looks like it's fresh, a freshly cut piece of wood, but it looks like it's perhaps from a fence. It's, I think it's like 2 inches by 3 inches. It's square and white on one side, but it's broken off and the brake is fresh. And it doesn't belong there. Obviously, that's where you look for it at a crime scene, something that's out of place. We noted a second gate around the corner on Ashford Street called the Ashford Gate. It too was locked and secured. There was a phone by that gate that went into the inside of the residence. We had picked up the phone, tried to notify someone inside, and got no response. And it's now about 5:15 in the morning. With two cars in the driveway, a light on inside, no one responding to our calls in the inside. We notified the local security who came by shortly thereafter, and we asked them if they knew about anybody inside. They were aware that O.J. Simpson lived there, and they had no further information as far as contact numbers or anything else. So we had to get inside to see, to make this notification. I became alerted that this is 2 miles from a very bloody crime scene. There should be somebody here with these cars. We felt there was a strong possibility that there may be problems here. This also may be an extension of the crime scene. We may have more victims. We don't know. These are exigent circumstances, as the law would describe them. You have to make a decision. Okay, you can go to breakfast maybe, you can go back to the scene. No, you don't do any of that nonsense. You have an exigent circumstance, you've got to get into the house. Furman was standing by the wall. It's a large wall. I think it was like 15 inches thick, 5 feet tall. He crawled over the wall and he opened the Ashford gate to let us in. At that point, the four of us went to the front door, banged on the door. We got no response. There was more concern about someone inside, that there may be a problem. We went around to the rear of the location, and the rear was secured. There was a glass door that was locked. We banged on the door, and we got no response. We noticed 2 rooms off to the back, attached from the home, like 2 little extra bedrooms. Knocked on the first one, and it was answered by Orenthal Simpson, who turns out to be O.J. Simpson's daughter. And a young man, a blonde-haired, long-haired man, came to the second one. That was Kato Kaelin. We had woken both of them up in their separate locations, identified ourselves, and we said we wanted to know where her dad was. Her first comment to me was, well, isn't he in the house? When she said that, after we identified ourselves, I became really concerned, because if he's in the house, there's a problem. he may be another victim. So I said, well, we don't know because no one's responding. Do you have a key to the rear to get in? And she said, yes, I'll get the key. What's going on? She became very concerned, obviously so, with 4 cops knocking on the door at 5:30 in the morning, asking about her dad. I also asked, should there been anybody in there? And she said, well, just my dad was probably there. But unbeknownst to us, Furman was talking to Kato Kaelin. Kato Kaelin had told him that Simpson was actually on a plane on his way to Chicago early the night before. So we went to the door, she unlocked it, and she's becoming now almost frantic, wanting to know what's going on. I had to calm her down, and I said, there's been a problem that Nicole, do you know Nicole? We'd identified Nicole at that time. Nicole Simpson, Nicole Brown Simpson. Yes, what's wrong? I said, well, she died. Arnell became very upset. She started screaming. She wanted to get inside the house. I said, no, let us go in. And I said, this is to myself and my partner, this could get really bad. So kept her out and opened the door and I went inside, not knowing what we'd find. We also were informed that there was a housekeeper that stayed there and had her own room. I asked Arnell where the room was. She told me it's in and off to the left. So I went in and everything looked fine. And I went to the maid's room. It was fine. The bed was made. Everything was in place. There was nothing disturbed. And so I went back out and I said, what's going on with your dad? And at that time, Kato had come out and said that, oh, by the way, he's in Chicago to Arnell. Apparently she either forgot that he was in Chicago or wasn't aware of it. Again, we woke her up from a dead sleep. Maybe she didn't understand what we wanted. That was taken care of. And we were told that the housekeeper took the night off Sunday night, so she wasn't there. Everything was fine in the house. We explained what was going on and went inside the house. Kato was becoming concerned. He wanted to know what was going on. We told him that there'd been a problem. We explained to him that Nicole had been killed without any other details. We went inside the house and right away, Arnell wanted to call A.C. Cowlings, who was like a brother to her. He was very close with O.J., very close to the family. So she wanted him there. And I said, fine, call him. Meanwhile, Phillips got on the phone, and after we found out where Simpson was in Chicago, Phillips called Chicago and got Simpson on the phone, explained to him that there's been a problem at home without giving him any details. He said, okay, fine, I'll be on the next plane coming back. And that's about all he said. At this point, it struck me kind of strange that there had been someone killed and his kids were there when this happened. And he never asked about his kids. He never came excited about anything other than to say, I'll be on the next plane to L.A. We went back and were talking to Arnell and Kato a bit more. We had to make a decision about what to do with the family, and I wanted to talk to Simpson to see what plane he was on. And this became a little more concerning when I made a death notification to the Brown family. Now, I'd gotten that information from Arnell. The worst thing a cop wants to do is make a death notification. But that's part of the job. You have to sometimes. Is the way to make it over the phone? No. You never want to make a death notification over the phone. You want to do it in person. I can't think of anything more impersonal than to do something like that over the phone. However, we now have the media involved, which is a problem. They're going to find out about the Brown family and where they live, and they're going to do something about it. They're going to be there before us. That's the last thing an investigator wants, is for them to talk about the family without talking to us first. We do not want that. Therefore, I had to make a decision. We had to make this death notification over the phone. I didn't want to do it. I had no other choice. So I got a hold of the Browns, and I talked to Lou Brown, Nicole's dad first. And unbeknownst to me, Denise, Nicole's sister, was on an extension phone call on listening to my conversation, probably wanting to know what was going on so early on a Monday morning. So I said, well, Nicole looks like she's been killed. We don't have any details at this point, and we're trying to notify the family. I'm sorry to have to tell you that she's died, and we need to make that notification now. We're trying to get a hold of Mr. Simpson. All of a sudden, I hear all the screaming on the extension. Well, it's Denise. And she starts screaming about, he did it, that MF, he killed her. I know he killed her. Simpson, he killed her. And so I'm hearing all of this noise in the background. I'm totally distressed. Tried to calm them down over the phone. I gave them my name, and number, and any information. I said, we'll get back to you just as soon as we can. The media is already onto this. They're going to try to contact you. You can do what you want, but please don't talk to them before we get back to you. This is a situation now that's growing by the minute. Simpson says he's on his way back. We're going to have to wait for him, here at the house for him. And again, please don't share this with anybody at this point. So we cut the conversation with them. Right after that happened, Simpson called back, and I answered, and I talked to him. He said he got a flight and he's on his way back. I said, good. We can meet you at the airport. And he says, don't bother. A friend of mine will pick me up. I says, okay, we'd like to see you back at Rockingham. He says, I'll be there. I'll get picked up. I'll see you at Rockingham. Again, I didn't get into any details. He didn't ask about any details. If it's me and I have my kids at a house where 2 people were murdered, I would be real concerned about my kids. He never mentioned them. It was just a normal phone call. Okay, I'll be on the next flight. And that was it. Went outside, and as soon as I got off the phone, my partner came up to me and he said, Furman talked to Kato. Kato mentioned something about an earthquake or a big thud on the wall behind his bed. And so Furman went out to check it out, find out what was going on back there, and Furman found a leather glove that looks just like the leather glove we have at the crime scene. My first question was, well, is it a right-hand glove or a left-hand glove? They said, well, it looks like a right-hand glove. They didn't get too close to the glove. Now the glove, I went back, he said, take a look. So I went out. They showed me the glove. I didn't get too close. I was maybe 10 feet away, but it did look like a right-handed glove. It did look like the same type of glove. Now the glove was located at a very narrow walkway that was dark. Now the sun was beginning to come up, and that was why the glove was being able to see when Furman went back to check out what the so-called noise was. It looked like it was below a large, older outdoor air conditioning unit that was attached to the rear of Kato's bungalow. It stuck out, and anyone who wanted to go to the rear of this walkway would have had to go around this air conditioning unit and probably would have knocked into it, because I said there was no lights back there at all. It was old and it was stuck out, blocking probably 2/3 of the walkway, which was narrow anyway. And beyond that was a fence. So anybody that wanted to go beyond that air conditioning would have had to walk very carefully around the air conditioning unit and go to the rear. So staying with this narrow walkway for just a few seconds, it extended to the rear of the 3 connected bungalows. And I walked back there. As I walked back there, I went through cobwebs and everything else. Obviously, this walkway wasn't used too often by anybody. But when I got to the rear, there was an open, vacant area, probably maybe 30 by 40 feet. And back there was nothing but junk. There was an old wheelbarrow, old tools, old tires. It looked like the residents were using that area just to throw junk away until they got to a point where they were tired of throwing junk away and I guess would remove it. But this was a place where everything was just abandoned. But then in the back of my mind, why would someone be back there? And now we have a glove beneath the air conditioning unit. We walked out. We did a little bit of talking, and again, the sun was coming up. My partner's out on the front driveway, and he sees what looks to be a trail of blood coming from the Rockingham gate up towards the front door. And these things are building in your mind. Glove, blood, gate, car. What is it doing at it? Why isn't it in the driveway with the other cars? This isn't evidence of anything, but it builds in your mind. These are things that you observe. Foreman sees what appears to be a tiny speck of blood. Now, we don't know if it's blood or not, but it appears to be what is blood. Now, the driver's side of the Bronco, the door opens out and towards the front. You have to open that with your left hand. You could open it technically with your right hand, but if you do that, you're way over here and you're opening the door into yourself. It doesn't make any sense. Irrespective of whether you're a left-handed person or a right-handed person, you are going to open that door with your left hand. Again, one of those little things you stick in the back of your mind. We got looks like a speck of blood there. Now we have blood tailing. When I say tailing, a blood droplet, when it strikes the surface, will tail in the direction of travel of the source. If it hits, it's going to splatter, and it's going to parallel out where the tail will be to the front towards the direction that the source is going. That's what I mean by tailing. It was tailing from the general area of the rear of the Bronco up the driveway and into the house. Okay, we've got the blood speck, we've got the glove, we've got the blood tailing, the Bronco. We have another crime scene, or an extension of the previous crime scene. At this point, we have to stop what we're doing and decide what to do. Well, obvious thing for us, we've done a few of these, you need a warrant, you need a search warrant. We can't go any further without, and we're not going to have a problem getting a search warrant. So we declare the Rockingham house a crime scene. I tell Arnell and AC, who has just shown up, that they're going to have to leave as well, Kato, because it's a crime scene. We suggest they go to the police station because we're going to have to talk to them also eventually. And we have the kids there. They can reunite with the kids. Simpson is en route. We have a crime scene at Rockingham. We've secured Rockingham. It's going to take a while to get a warrant because in order to get a warrant under these circumstances, you're going to have to go through the district attorney's office, get a DA involved if you can. At this point, it's obvious in our minds we have a high-profile situation. It's going to be a lot of media because there's celebrity involved. Whether or not O.J. Simpson is a suspect is unknown. We have questions for him, obviously, as the spouse or former spouse or whatever. We're going to have questions for anybody in the family. We're going to interview everybody probably more than a couple of times. He's not a suspect at this point. But Rockingham is a crime scene. We have to get a warrant. So Phil will go in, Vannatter, my partner, meet up with the district attorney's office, put the case together for that DA. We'll have to seek out a judge, get the judge to approve the warrant. We'll have to return to the location before we can do anything with that evidence that we've seen and before we can search the house, because we fully intend to thoroughly search the house. Phil has been working with a DA by the name of Marcia Clark. Well, I knew Marcia because I had worked with her on a couple of cases. In fact, we currently had a case, an organized crime case, a murder for hire case, that she had just refused after working it for a year to file. But that's another matter. But I had a problem with her on that other case. Phil and her had handled murder cases together. In fact, they handled the first no-body DNA case in the state of California, and she did an excellent job, and they got a conviction on a no-body DNA case. She was known to be a very hard-nosed prosecutor, very bright, but I had a personal thing because she had pulled the rug out from under a case that I was involved in. My concern now is this particular case. We got to do something. So I told Phil that I would rather not have her. And I'm now back at Bundy. I've got to get back there to conduct this crime scene investigation. The bodies are still there. The media is building up over there. The coroner's got to roll on this. I got to get back. We don't have time to mess around with this. So I said, okay, fine, go with Marcia. So Phil takes off, going to find Marcia. He's going to get the warrant. I return to the Bundy location where I commence the crime scene investigation. And I'm there for several hours, obviously doing that. And the coroner's office shows up. One thing leads to another. We go through all the motions of the crime scene investigation. I've got a criminalist there. 2 criminalists are there. I've got photographers there. I've got print people. I've got 4 latent print people working. They're starting to get prints on the exterior. We want the interior of the house also looked at, although there's no evidence that the suspect went into the home. Both bodies are outside on the walkway by the front gate of the Bundy location, although the front door is wide open. I go inside and there's no evidence of any wrongdoing or any crime scene or blood or anything else inside. It's apparent that the victim did everything, were outside when they were attacked, and that the suspect walked directly by the front door. Now, of some interest, just beyond the front door and towards the rear gate, where the bloody foot impressions go, they stop. And whoever left the footwear impressions turns around, because you can see the footwear impressions turning around back towards the bodies. And they're looking back down towards the body. And then they turn around and continue walking. And again, we did a heel-toe analysis. Whoever was walking, they were walking. They weren't running. So whoever committed this crime, this suspect, did not run from the scene. They walked. Why would they stop and look back? Well, again, back at the scene, we not only have the bodies, but we have the glove, the cap, the knit cap. Did the suspect become aware that, hey, I lost my glove, I lost my cap. Should I go back or not? Well, they decided not to. The suspect continued on towards the rear through the rear gate, leaving a blood trail to his left. Again, one of the little things you put in the back of your mind, we have a blood trail on the left side of the footwear impressions that the source left. Again, tailing in conjunction with the footwear impressions, all tailing back towards the alley. There are 5, 6 blood droplets tailing in that same direction. It's going to take some time before we can analyze all of this blood. So we know we're going to ask for blood, not just from the victims, but from anybody else who may be suspected as a possible suspect. Eventually, this will include O.J. Simpson. On the other side of the gate, I see 2 coins. I think it was a dime and a penny. Next to a concentric, a round blood droplet. So I'm thinking that particular last blood droplet came from a source straight down. That source was not moving. However, the 5 blood droplets prior were moving, tailing through the gate towards this one droplet. It was concentric. Right next to the dime and the penny. I believe it was a dime and a penny. So what does this mean? Well, again, you put that in the back of your mind. Could someone have been going into their pocket looking for their keys to their car because they may have left that way? That's where the bloody footwear impressions go. And inadvertently dropped a couple of coins. And is that when this last blood droplet was left? Because the source was not moving when that blood droplet hit the ground. Is this what had happened? We don't know. So we take photographs of all of this stuff. Inside the house, we find that there's a large butcher knife on the counter, kitchen counter. There's no apparent blood on it. We print it. There's no tape. There's no prints on it. There's no latent prints on it. There's no debris on it. No nothing. It's just lying on the counter. Question, what is that doing there? Did someone hear something? Took out the knife, perhaps in defense of themselves? We don't know. I go upstairs where the kids were. There's a large tub bath of water that's been drawn. This candle's lit all the way around the bathtub, and the tub is full. Was the victim intending on taking a bath? Was she drawn away from it because she's wearing a kind of a mini skirt, a shift, with no shoes? Did someone come to her door, and was she waiting for someone, and had she already drawn the bath and lit all the candles? I've known that women like to, when they take baths, they like to relax and they like to light candles. There's nothing unusual about any of this. But obviously, in my mind, she was probably being interrupted from her bath, went down, answered the door for one reason or the other. Again, unanswered questions. But again, she has no shoes on. All of these things are documented, photographed. We begin to look at things a little more closely. Meanwhile, there's a pager that continues to go off near the male victim. So we're building all of this evidence. Everybody's working. The media is building up across the way. At one point, we have these cameras zoning in on the victims. I said earlier, the victim, unfortunately, in these cases, is also evidence. The position the victim is evidence. Any blood formations, any blood streaks, anything on the blood in the form of blood trailing on the victim is evidence. The fact that the victim has jewelry on or the lack of jewelry is evidence. The fact this one victim is barefooted is evidence. Folding in the clothes is evidence. This is all evidence that could go to eliminate or inculpate any suspect that may be interviewed or a witness. You want this evidence protected that is now on the victim and the victim themselves. It's not something that you want to do, but under these conditions with these high velocity cameras that they're all being set up, Nicole needed to be covered, and we didn't have tents or anything else. The male victim off to the side was protected from the cameras across the street. So I got one of the officers to go inside and say, get a clean sheet, blanket, or whatever you can, make sure it's clean. Bring it out, we're going to place it over Nicole. You don't suggest to do this because there's always a possibility you're going to leave evidence, fiber evidence, or anything else that'll have to be checked out later on and discarded as evidence, depending on what the blanket of the sheet is. So you want to be careful putting something over a victim. But our choice is we either put a blanket over this particular victim, or we leave ourselves open to all of this evidence being released to the world. The folds in the clothing, the jewelry, which the watch becomes an issue later, the blood trailing, the injuries of the victim as evidence. Had to make a decision. The decision is made. I want the evidence preserved. So this was questioned later, and it had nothing to do with nothing. It turns out it's a red herring because it was able to protect all of that evidence and still use this sheet. Actually, it turned out to be a very tight-woven, tight-woven hospital blanket that was used. That was the right call then. It's the right call today. I would do it again without even questioning. At this point, I'm notified by my partner that Simpson has landed and he's at Rockingham. He says the media is all over us again, all over Rockingham. We're going to take Simpson to the station, RHD, we're at Robbery Homicide Division, my office downtown, where we need to interview him, and we need to interview him now. I hate to leave a crime scene under these circumstances. I had, again, no choice. I could stay there and say, well, he can wait another 6 or 8 hours while I continue with the crime scene investigation. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. We need to talk to him now. I put someone else in charge of the crime scene at that point. I have a photographers working. I have latent print people working. I have criminalists working. Once the criminalists are done with Bundy, they're going to roll over to Rockingham because now we have essentially 3 crime scenes. You have Bundy, you have Rockingham, and you have the Bronco. We look further in the Bronco. Before I left, and in the back, I noticed a big shovel in plastic wrapping, and I'm thinking in the back, what is the shovel and wrapping doing in the back of this car? We run a DMV check on the car, and it's a Hertz car. Hertz, O.J. Simpson, they put two and two together. Obviously, this is a Hertz vehicle that they've given him to either use, or they let him do it for the advertising of the vehicle. And I don't know. But we've got what appears to be a speck of blood on it. We've got this shovel and all this plastic tarp in the back. We want to get inside that vehicle and check it out thoroughly. That also is going to go on the search warrant. We've got all of these things working. So you have to prioritize. So right now, Simpson's back. He's going to talk. That's priority one. I returned to Robbery Homicide Division. Simpson is already there with two attorneys, Howard Weitzman and Skip Taft. Howard Weitzman is a well-known entertainment attorney. Skip Taft is more or less a family law type, civil litigant type attorney, but they're attorneys. They're here representing O.J. Simpson for whatever purposes. O.J. Simpson is not a suspect at this point, but he needs to be talked to. The sooner the better. Because of his wife, again, or she's estranged five, has been murdered. We get there, and I'm introduced to everybody. I'm introduced to Simpson, and I explain we'd like to talk to your client. And Weitzman says, fine. Can we talk to him first? I said, that's fine. Take all the time you want. So Weitzman and Skip Taft go with Simpson, and they sit down. They talk for, 15, 20 minutes. And then he comes out and he says, it's all yours. And it kind of struck me a little difficult because the first thing I noticed when I was talking to Simpson, when I shook his hand, he used his right hand, but his left hand was bleeding. And I looked down and still bleeding. He's kind of protecting it. So I'm thinking again, those little things you put in the back of your head. Crime scene, left side, blood tailing, left side of a probable suspect with bloody footwear impressions. Left glove crime scene, right glove Rockingham. Doesn't mean he's a murder suspect. It means we're going to have to spend some time with him because now we have to ask him about that bleeding finger. Why wouldn't his attorney say something about that? It never came up. Maybe they didn't see it. I don't know. But now we're going to spend some time with Simpson. We're going to see what he's all about. It doesn't take long. Well, these two attorneys go to get a bite to eat, and they say, we'll be back. And okay, fine. So we went inside the interrogation or interview room, whatever you want to call it. There's two types of situations that you can come up with here. You can interrogate someone or you can interview them. If you're going to interrogate someone, you better have something to interrogate him with, and it's called evidence. There was no evidence, direct evidence of Simpson's involvement. We knew he was bleeding. Very interesting. Let's see what he says about the blood. Let's see what he says about what he did last night. This is interview. It didn't take but about 5 seconds to realize that O.J. Simpson's personality is very narcissistic. He's in charge. If he's not in charge, no game. You don't confront someone with no evidence, go good cop, bad cop, which is an interrogation, confronting them with evidence that you don't have if you don't have it. You let him speak. See what kind of inconsistencies we can get. But first, you have to advise him of his rights. Right away, that could put him off. We'll have to wait and see. So we sit down, and Phil explains to him, we're going to record the interview. And by the way, Weitzman mentioned to his credit, we want any recording done. If you guys are going to talk to you, he said, fine, not a problem. We'll see you later type of thing. So Phil advises him of his rights. He agrees to that, and he says he understands his rights, and he will talk to us. The interview lasts 33 minutes. In the interview, he is very takeover. He's, like I said, obviously a narcissist. To my mind, and I've worked around many sociopaths. A sociopath is someone who's not only going to take charge of things, but has no guilt. Okay. He's never going to feel guilt about anything. He's going to say anything he wants because he's in charge of not just himself, but of you and any conversation you're going to have. If you confront this personality, he's going to say, hey, I don't have to talk to you. I'm here. You guys want to talk to me, and now you're accusing me of this, that, or the other. I don't have to be here, which he doesn't. He can invoke. He can get up and walk out at any time, and he knows it. Well, we want to play him along. It's not an interview that's going to stay that way. Let's see if we can get some inconsistencies. The interview goes on some 33 minutes. And during that time, we get like 11 different inconsistent and basic inculpatory type of statements. In other words, statements that include perhaps something that he may be involved with or not. Things that lead to questions like his finger. We get 3 very vague explanations about how he cut his finger.
How did you do it in Chicago? I broke the glass. You had one of you guys that just called me, and I was in the bathroom, and I just kind of went bonkers for a little bit.
Is that how you cut it?
It was cut before, but I think I just opened it again. I'm not sure.
And I cut myself. I think it was in Chicago when you guys called me. I dropped the glass, and I might have cut myself on the glass. I've always cut. Maybe on my cell phone it could have done that. I don't know.
Do you recall bleeding at all in your truck in the Bronco?
I recall bleeding at my house, and then I went to the Bronco. The last thing I did before I left, when I was rushing, was went and got my phone out of the Bronco.
Yeah, I probably was bleeding last night.
So do you recall bleeding at all?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I was bleeding, but it was no big deal. I bleed all the time. I mean, I play golf and stuff. There's always something mixed and stuff here.
So did you do anything? When did you put the Band-Aid on?
Actually, I asked the girl this morning for it.
In Chicago?
Yeah.
Did you bleed maybe at the scene?
We've got, of course, the cut on your finger that you aren't really clear on. Do you recall having that cut on your finger the last time you were at the Coles house?
A week ago?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, so it's been since.
Sure, yeah. Okay. This last night.
Okay, somewhere last night you got it. Somewhere after the recital?
Somewhere when I was rushing to get out of my house.
I'm cutting myself all the time. I do this and that.
We found some in your house. Is that your blood that's dripped there?
If it's dripped, it's what I dripped running around trying to leave.
Last night?
Yeah, and I wasn't aware that it was. I was aware that I was trying to get out of the house. I didn't pay any attention to it. I saw it when I was in the kitchen, and I grabbed a napkin or something, and that was it. And I didn't think about it after that.
That was last night after you got home from the recital where you were right.
That was last night when I don't know what I was. I was in the car. I get my jump out of the car. I was in the house. I was throwing hangers and stuff in my suitcase. I was doing my little crazy what I do.
If I cut myself, and we all do, I guess from time to time, I'm going to realize that I'm bleeding. I'm probably going to put a Band-Aid on. When I'm talking to Simpson, I said, well, your finger is still bleeding. Why don't we get the doctor to look at that? Put a Band-Aid on it. Oh, it's okay, fine. Well, no, it's not. I want him to do that. Because while I may come off like I'm concerned for his welfare, I'm looking at evidence. He also gives us his blood. Before we leave, and while he's getting his finger taped up, I asked him, I said, by the way, would you mind giving us some blood? He says, no problem. No, I'll give it to you. This saves us from having to go getting another search warrant, saves us going through the hassle of maybe the attorneys finding us and everything else, because again, we have goodwill with this guy. He's just one of the guys helping us along, trying to get through this investigation. This is how you handle this type of a suspect. You don't hard ass him, you don't yell at him or anything else. If you do, you're going to lose him and everything else he's cooperated in giving you. I want it photographed, I want it talked about, I want it MT'd, medical treatment. I want all that stuff done because his bleeding finger is now evidence. Will he go along with this? Yes, he's done this. He will go along with us. He'll allow us to take pictures of his still bleeding finger because we're going along with him. Again, if some had said that we should interrogate and get in his face, slap your fist down on the table and make this into some interrogation, you're not going to listen. He's out of there. We're going to lose everything that we've already got. We're going to lose his culpatory statements that he's given us about where he parked the night before. Yeah, I parked in the back. in the alley. Well, that just happens to be where the bloody footwear impressions go and where the blood trails goes to the rear. That's where the killer left from. That's inculpatory. Do you bleed? Did you bleed last night? Yeah, I did bleed. So these things are put together in a statement. I say, we'd like your fingerprints. I want to get some pictures of your bleeding finger. I want a doctor to look at it. And all these things goes along with all of this stuff. Now, again, it's important that we keep his good welfare with him. If you don't, he could blow up. He's a narcissist. Let him think he's in charge. It's not going to hurt my ego. I don't have an ego when it comes to those things. Let him lead the ship, because I also want him to meet me at Rockingham and take me around his room. Will he really do that? Is he that much of a sociopath, of a narcissist, that he's going to think that he can control everything that I do and he's in charge? Well, it turns out, yes, which is fine with me. Once we're through with getting the finger looked at, the photographs taken, fingerprints and everything else, I tell him, we've got a search warrant for Rockingham. We'd like you to meet us back there and maybe help us out. We can get to the bottom and I have a few questions answered. Fine, no problem. Anything you want to do. All right, fine. We'll see you back there then. Okay, we'll see you there. He leaves after we get all of this information, and he eventually is released. Takes off. We all take back off. We now have a criminalist at Rockingham. They're already going to work on the blood trail. We are in the process of having the Bronco impounded. We've got people inside looking at this, that, and the other. We're doing backgrounds in neighborhoods, Rockingham as well as Bundy. But I want him to go with me on a little walk around his house. So we're up in his bedroom. Well, obviously, we've got the footwear impressions. We've already sized them. We already know basically what the footwear impressions look like. We've got photographs close up. We've measured them. We know that our person was probably pretty cool cucumber, as they say, because he walked from a very bloody crime scene where 2 people were slaughtered, wasn't any area to get out of there. We know that that person was very probably injured somewhere on the left side of their body. We know that that person probably lost a glove. Interestingly so, it was a left glove. We have a left injury on the left side of Simpson. But I'm not going to press him when I get to Rocky. I want other things on the show. Because we have goodwill with him, we're in his bedroom. And I said, could you help me out with a couple of things? Yeah, fine. I said, could you show me maybe what clothes you were wearing last night? He says, yeah, sure. So he picks out a few things. Yeah, I had this on and that and everything else. In my mind, if he's a suspect, he's not going to show me a pile of bloody clothing. I said, okay, fine. So you had this stuff on? Yeah, it's fine. I said, okay, well, you get a kind of look at it. I might want to take it. Is that okay? Yeah, he says, you can take anything you want. I said, okay, fine. Can you show me what shoes you were wearing last night? Do you remember? Yeah, I remember. It was me a pair of sneakers. I pick them up. I turn them over. They're nothing near the footwear impressions, the bloody footwear impressions we have at the crime scene. Obviously, he did not leave those prints. Yet he said he was wearing these last night. I said, okay, fine. Would you mind if I keep these? Oh, no problem at all. Well, he'll know if he's a suspect that he didn't have these on last night. He doesn't care. So why did I take the shoes? To size the shoes. In his own admissions, these are his shoes worn by him. Size 12. Again, if these are size 10, this is exculpatory evidence. Goes on his behalf, the behalf of the suspect, because he's size 12. And whoever left these footwear impressions at the crime scene is size 12. Well, the bloody footwear impressions at the crime scene are size 12. He, through an own admission, tells me that he is wearing size 12 shoes, the same size left by the suspect at the crime scene. All inculpatory stuff, good stuff. That's why I take the shoes. Later, I'm scorned, I guess, for taking the shoes, and you should have been directly booked in. It couldn't have been because our booking procedure, they're not open 24/7. You secure these things. These are not blood evidence on here. These were merely taken to secure his statement that he is size 12, and he is showing us that he is size 12 foot and wears size 12 shoes. That's the only reason these were taken. Meanwhile, he walks us through the house. He's cooperating with everything, and we get all of this without any problems. I was even told, well, I should have arrested him. Okay. The law says I could have made a probable cause arrest. However, when you make a probable cause arrest, you have 48 hours in which to file a case or release the person. No way that the DA is going to file a case on blood until it's analyzed in 48 hours. It doesn't happen that way. PCR results and any other DNA, any kind of blood results, you're not going to get them within 48 hours. It just isn't going to happen. We could have booked him, and it would have looked really foolish on our parts unless we thought he was going to flee, which he unfortunately did, which is interesting too. I suppose one could argue that point. But to arrest him at that point wouldn't have made any sense at all. We need to get this evidence straightened out and find out what we have before we even come back at him as a possible suspect. I've handled dozens of murder cases. Many times, the person you have as target on their back looks like a suspect, and they're not. So supposition is not evidence. Your feelings about someone is not evidence. Evidence is evidence. You have to prove certain things. It's going to take more than 48 hours to do this. In any high-profile case, there are dozens of binders. This is a personal binder. This wasn't in court. This wasn't evidence. This was something I did on my own time. Every day I wrote 2 to 3 pages, handwritten notes. There's almost 500 pages in this particular binder. This is a copy of that binder. The original binder is in the National Police Museum in Washington, D.C. They wanted it there, and it's displayed there in a case. During this trial, I knew it was going to be a high-profile case. There's going to be people with allegations. There's going to be problems with evidence. There's going to be questions. And most of these things, these questions and these concerns will come up months, if not years later. So you want a reference. I want my personal reference because I'm going to be involved in this. I want to tell people that this is what happened. Here it is. I wrote it down when it happened. Location, time, date. No question, because this is in my handwriting. So that's why I did the book. And in that regard, it was very successful. I did that. But again, this book is not evidence. This is, for me, when I'm called out on something, all I got to do is go and find it here in the book, and there it is. So you say, may I go and check my records on that? And the court would say, yes, obviously. Binders that you see during the trial, and you see it testifying, the detectives may be testifying to it, are chronological records, essentially. And you are going back in time and writing down dates and times and locations and what you did as part of your investigation. Now, the attorneys, the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, they're going to want to know certain things, when they occurred, why they occurred, and where they occurred. So you go back to your chronological record, and you can get it directly from there. That is official. That is evidence. That just aids the presentation when you get asked a question, because nobody can remember everything that happened all the time. It'd be impossible.
I know Furman had said they're bringing blood back to the crime scene where they're collecting blood. Really? What would anyone have Phil do then?
Yeah, the search at Rockingham continued, and I was back at the office trying to get the case together. It was at this point that my partner, after we got the blood from Simpson, he took the blood, which was secured in a vial, and which was then secured in a large envelope, signed off with seals on it, because there was a nonsensical argument that came out that my partner had actually put the vial in his pocket of Simpson's blood and was walking around with it, which is ridiculous. It didn't happen. The vial was sealed and initialed with a seal. Again, that vial was put into a large envelope. That envelope was signed and sealed. And Phil took that back to Rockingham and gave it to the criminalist, Dennis Flung, who was conducting his investigation at Rockingham, so that that blood could be booked into evidence. And it would obviously have to be analyzed. It was booked into an analyzed evidence envelope. Blood, or whatever the evidence happens to be, when you have a criminalist, the criminalist is number one. They're responsible for booking the evidence. Phil can take the evidence to property and say, I want to book this. And they would say, okay, fine. It needs a DR number called Divisions of Record Number, which identifies it. A particular piece of evidence is belonging to this particular case. He would have had to phone that in and get a number. He could not have done that unless he's booking the evidence. They will not be booked without that number. The number could not have been obtained without the criminalist asking for it. That could be you. You could walk over there and say, I want to book the blood. Well, wait a minute. Are you a police officer? No, I'm a producer. Well, what are you doing with the blood? That's his job. Your job here is to do the show we're doing right now. Phil's job is to make sure that blood gets to the right person. That's just simple. Now, that's not his job to book the evidence. It's not his job to do any of that. The blood went to the crime scene because that's where the criminalist is. You can't take it in the office and leave it on his desk. So he brought that envelope to the crime scene, gave it to the criminalist, who took possession of it. The nurse drew the blood out, booked that into an envelope. The evidence went to Phil. Phil went to the criminalist. You have to be able to have this line of evidence and show where it went at all times. And that was part of linking this evidence that Phil completed. To do anything other than that would have, number one, been a violation of not only department policy, but would have caused real questions to be asked about real evidence. Again, this was a red herring, but a red herring exacerbated by someone who screwed things up so bad that they had to do one of these. It's them, it ain't me. And that's simple as that. Blood, in my mind at that time, became the core of the evidence in the case. This was going to be all about blood. And that's what it became. And of course, Marcia Clark was going to be the prosecutor. And in a criminal investigation, once the district attorney, once you file a case, they're the boss. They take the case over. You essentially are their witness, but you also work for them. So our case now was to get results back. We did get some initial results back on the blood. Simpson alluded to the fact that he did bleed in his Bronco because we were finding blood in the Bronco. Initial testing, we found 3 different types of blood in the Bronco, O.J. Simpson's, and the 2 victims. Now he's a suspect in my mind. Eventually, we take the doors off that Bronco, we take the console out, take the windshields out, seats out, everything else. And we find more blood. We do luminol testing that detects blood that's not discernible to the human eye initially, the luminol testing. Come up with more evidence of blood. Take out the passenger. This is a couple of weeks after. We take out the passenger seat and I notice a little light bulb that goes in the interior of a car, the interior light bulb rolling around underneath the passenger seat. And I look up in the Bronco and one is missing. Well, we find out that the one that's rolling around underneath the seat belongs up there. What is it doing underneath the seat? And I hearken back to when I was a young cop in Hollywood. It was in the 60s. We didn't have cutoff switches and that type of stuff. If you opened the door in an alley at 3 a.m., you'd illuminate yourself. And you don't want to do that when you're in a dark alley at 3 a.m. and you're stopping a suspect. So before we went out on patrol, we would make sure we didn't have that light. We'd pull that little bulb. If it was there, we'd throw it on the seat. What is this bulb doing under the seat in Simpson's Bronco? Come to find out it's serviceable, but there are no prints on it. But what's it doing underneath the seat? Well, he tells us he parked in the alley. The alley is pitch black. 1994 Broncos Some models had cutoff switches for the interior lights, some did not. Simpson's model did not have a cutoff switch. So if you open the door, it automatically comes on unless you remove it. Did Simpson remove the bulb on purpose so he wouldn't be illuminated when he opened the door in the alley of Nicole's home when he arrived? Or did he not want to be illuminated when he left and opened the door? Is this way he may have removed it and threw it under the seat? Is this direct evidence of him committing a murder? No, of course not. It's circumstantial evidence that this could have happened, that this could be an intent. It's called intent. If you have one or two of those things, you can question them. When you got 15 or 20 of them, they begin to build. And this is what we have. All these little things are building. The cut on the finger, that particular thing, Denise's statement, 5 pages of typewritten pages of little things like that, 20-something items we put together like that were never brought in the trial, including the statements he gave us, the inculpatory statements. Friday, June 17th, Simpson was to turn himself in at the jail at Parker Center, downtown LA, to us. And he was going to be booked because we had obtained a warrant for his arrest for murder, for 2 counts of murder. He was supposed to turn himself in. That is not the way I like to do business, nor does my partner. We're used to going out and arresting people and doing all of that ourselves. The reason being is you don't want that person to flee. If that person knows you're coming for them, they wait, and they're wanted for 2 murders, they may just get in the wind for obvious reasons. You could also lose evidence if they knew you were coming to arrest them. We want to make that arrest ourselves and handle it ourselves. But we work for someone who tells us what to do, like any other bureaucracy. The brass wanted a show because it's a high publicity case. They wanted all this on video, so they went ahead and approved, yeah, you can bring him in. We don't want to do that, but that was their call, so we go along with them. The plan was for his lawyers to turn him in, we would book him, and that would be that. Comes time to turn himself in, I remember he called, I think it was 11 o'clock. I called Bob Shapiro. He says, well, he was at the house and he took off. He took off with AC, and you know how he is when he gets this way. I can't control him or something like this. They took off. We don't know where they are. He's in AC's Bronco. I said, AC has a Bronco? Yeah, just like Simpson. So, took off in his Bronco. A lot of people to this day don't know that there's 2 white Broncos involved here. We don't know where they are. They're in the wind. They didn't tell us where they were going. We don't know what to do. And so I said, well, we got a problem. Ported that in. So the LAPD puts their press people out and they say that he's a wanted fugitive. They make the release to the media to gasp him and all this other stuff. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, where does someone like O.J. Simpson go, especially with A.C. Cowlings, who is now, is he an accomplice to this? We don't know. Where did they go? We don't know. So I go back to my office and we're trying to put all of this together. And meanwhile, I hear in the back a couple of people, including a couple of the chiefs, have come down and they're concerned about what are we going to do now. And somebody yells out, OJ's on the screen, he's on TV. And I look up, we have a little TV in the corner of the squad bay. And we see the chase. Somebody looks like a helicopter has found his car, the white Bronco, AC's white Bronco. And they're following him on the Golden State Freeway. Apparently they're coming back northbound. And behind them we see all these sheriff's units and highway patrol. Very slow speed they look like they're going 25 or 30 miles an hour. All these police cars behind them. And they found Simpson. And now what are we going to do type of thing? Well, it appears he's going slow, so maybe they can let him stop. So I'm thinking now it's the job of who's ever pursuing him to pull him over. Are they going to do a pit maneuver? Are they going to try to pull alongside of him? is AC, who appears to be driving, going to stop, pull over. Meanwhile, I'll be getting reports. We're getting direct reports from the sheriffs, Orange County sheriffs, who are in pursuit in the highway patrol. They say that AC is driving the Bronco. Simpson is in the back seat. He's sitting there in the back seat, looking around, and then all of a sudden, one of the deputies says, and he has a gun. So they tell that to us over the phone. He's got a gun, and I said to myself simply, shit. Now what are we going to do? You got a guy wanted for 2 murders. He took off, but he's not in any hurry to get away from anybody. But he's got a gun. Okay, this changes everything. What are we going to do? Well, you have to assume the gun is real. You have to assume it's loaded. But more importantly, you have to assume he's going to use it. Well, how is he going to use it? Is he going to shoot himself? I don't know. He's going to shoot AC? I doubt it, but who knows? How about the cops that are right behind him? There's 10, 12 police cars behind him. Is he going to shoot at them? He's going to shoot at the helicopter. I don't know. He's going to shoot at some of the people now. They're going so slow, actually running onto the freeway, banging on the windows, some of them, the closer they get to West LA. And more people are showing up at my desk like I'm supposed to make a decision there. And I don't know what we're going to do. We're just going to have to see how this plays out. He can't do this forever. And then all of a sudden it kind of hits me that we know he's got a mobile phone, but they don't have the number. So I call Patty Jo Fairbanks, who's the witness coordinator at the DA's office. She's got the phone number. So she gives me the phone number, and at least this is something. But he's not going to pick up on his mobile phone. No way he's ever going to pick up. So I call him, and he picks up. It just shocked me. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. So I identified myself, and I started talking to him. And again, my main thrust here was on the gun, and that's all. He sounds out of it. He sounds like he hadn't slept in a couple of days, like he may be under the influence of something.
Yeah, just let me get to my house. Okay, we're going to do that. I swear to you, I'll give you what. I'll give you me. I'll give you my whole body. Okay. I need to get to my house. Okay. We're going to do that. Just throw the gun out the window. We're not going to bother you. We're going to let you go up there. Just throw it out the window, please. You're scaring everybody.
Later on, we find that he is under the influence of marijuana, but he's getting this moaning and groaning, and I'd love to get this recorded, but we're not. All of a sudden, one of the people from the electronics unit runs in. They've got a tape recorder. Somebody thought this through, and the good thinking, they run in and they hook my phone up with a tape recorder. So now I'm able, the first couple of conversations I was not able to get recorded, but now I'm hooked up and I'm able to record conversations, because hopefully this is going to be some kind of evidence also. I tell him that, tomorrow's another day. Think about your kids. This is going to end. You don't want to do, oh, yes, I do need to do it, and all this other stuff.
Don't hurt everybody. You're going to hurt everybody.
I'm just going to leave. I'm
No,
going to go
don't.
with Nicole. That's all I'm going to do. That's all
Hey,
I'm
listen.
trying to do.
Think about everybody
I
else, all
couldn't
right?
do it on the freeway. I couldn't do it in a field. I want to do it at a grave. I want to do it in my house.
You're not going to do anything. Too many people love you. Your kids, your mother, your friends, AC, everybody. You got the whole world. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away, man. Come on.
In my mind, I don't know what he's going to do, but again, you have to assume that he's going to use that gun. So again, just talking about throw the gun out, put the gun down. You don't need to do this. Your family loves you. Your mother's worried about you. You've got the kids. We'll all work this out. There's an answer to all this stuff goes on and on and on. And now we find out that it looks like he's moving back towards West LA. And, I just wanted to do that. I just wanted to be with Nicole. And then, later on, it's just, I just want to get home maybe and this, that, and the other. So we know he's going back to Rockingham. Besides, everybody's moving in that direction. So we let Metro know, which is SWAT, essentially. They have a SWAT unit. So we get SWAT to roll to Rockingham and set up because of the gun. If he ever goes to Rockingham and if he ends up there, SWAT will be waiting for him. When SWAT operates, they don't just park in front and wait for you to pull up. They conceal themselves, which they did, and they're very good at what they do. The problem is if he goes back to Rockingham, When he gets out of the Bronco and he's got the gun in his hand, they're going to shoot him. They're going to dump him right there. They won't have a choice. So again, all I can think of is don't get out of the Bronco with the gun. Leave the gun in. Leave it in the car. Be better tomorrow. You're going to be fine. Think of your kids. And all this stuff goes on until they pull into Rockingham. Media's everywhere. SWAT, I know, is set up. They pull in the driveway and they're going to beat in right on the Bronco and hope the guy didn't come out with a gun. And I tell him, leave the gun in the car. Don't take the gun out. Don't take it out. Well, he's not talking to me now. By now he's put the mobile phone down. You know, I'm just talking to nothing. What is he doing? So this goes on for 2-3 minutes. All too long. Way too long. Is he thinking of coming out with the gun or not? Is he going to shoot himself? I don't know what he's going to do. Meanwhile, just before this, Jason, his son, comes running out. He gets in at the AC. They're yelling at one another. A couple of cops went out. They grab Jason. They pull him back towards the house. And Simpson still hasn't gotten out. And the tension is building. What's going to happen? Because I know SWAT is honed in on the Bronco. Well, the door finally opens and he gets out. And thank God he doesn't have the gun. He left the gun inside. He gets out and a couple of SWAT guys come out and they grab him and they take him into custody. The whole time I'm wondering about what he's going to do now. Is he going to give us maybe an admission or confession of type? What are you going to do this one, the other? First thing they have to do is get him downtown to where we are. We'll see if what's going to happen from there. We have the warrants. Now he's obviously represented. He's not going to be talking to us even under these circumstances. But just getting away from this and subsequently what we find in the Bronco is very interesting, of course. Not only does he have the gun, which is real, which is loaded, but he has his passport. What does he have his passport? He's got over $8,000 in cash. He's got his Hall of Fame ring. He's got changes of underwear and socks. He's got a disguise kit. We find out the disguise kit was purchased in a North Hollywood store like 3 weeks before the murders happened. What does he know with the disguise kit? Mustache, little hair thing, and a little chin beard. What is he doing with all this stuff? Was he really trying to escape? I don't know. We find out later when we interview AC that night, and they headed down towards the Orange County to the cemetery when Nicole was buried, and they went to the grave of Nicole. AC tells us that when they got down there, he thought that Simpson was going to shoot himself because he had the gun. Later, he doesn't think as much, obviously, because Simpson comes out and they decide to get into the car. He doesn't know what they're going to do. They start back towards LA, towards the Rockingham house. Because of the direction, initially, we thought perhaps they were going to go to the border. But again, where's O.J. Simpson going to go? Everybody in the world is watching this thing on live television. He's not going to go anywhere, the bottom line is. Again, I'm not worried about this coming to a halt. It's just how it's going to come to a halt, and it becomes all about the gun. But we've taken care of that. He's in custody. He gets booked. We book him into custody downtown. He's thrashed. He's very tired. He's obviously hasn't slept in a while. And that's how that day ended.
On the way to McDonald's, did you happen to notice the time?
Yes, I did.
And where were you when you noticed what time it was?
At 26th and San Vicente. There's a stoplight.
What time was it when you got to 26 in San Vicente?
It was 9:15 and 9:18 was right in there.
How long after that did you get to McDonald's?
About 7 minutes.
Who paid for the food?
I paid because he had 20, so I had another 20, so I paid for the food.
And did you hand a second $20 bill then to the defendant to pay?
Yes.
So he drove and he ate his dinner at the same time on the way back to Rockingham?
Yes.
Did you notice any injury to his hands at that time?
No, I did not.
Or bleeding?
No.
What time did you get home?
About 9:40, 9:45, around there.
What did you do when you got back to the residence?
I got out and went to my room to eat.
Did you see where the defendant went?
No, I did not get out of the car, so.
And what time was it when you called her?
I called her at about 10:10, around there.
During that phone call, did something unusual occur?
Yeah, I heard a noise.
Now, how long had you been talking to your friend Rachel when you heard that noise?
It was probably a half hour into the conversation.
Okay, so about 10:40 or so you heard a noise?
It's about that time.
Can you describe for us the noise you heard, Mr. Kaelin?
It was like that.
For the record, the witness thumped on the witness stand with his fist.
Well, we went to trial, obviously, and there was a preliminary hearing in which he was held to answer. In a preliminary hearing, you need to produce enough evidence to hold him over into trial. In this particular case, for 2 homicides, 2 murders, not homicide, now it's murders. Murder is a homicide, but homicides aren't necessarily murders. I clear that up a little bit. Homicide is the taking of one life by another person. Doesn't mean it's necessarily a murder. But there are 2 counts of murder in this case. Held to answer at the preliminary hearing, so we get set for trial. Of course, this is a big circus. We could see that coming. This is a circus. What got to me initially and throughout the trial were 2 things, basically, that should have been done and that weren't. Were no-brainers in my mind. It's a huge trial, a lot of publicity. No way in hell this judge is going to allow this thing to be on television because it'll affect testimony, obviously. It'll affect the evidence. It'll affect the way attorneys act in court. It'll affect the way witnesses testify. So we don't have to worry about cameras in the courtroom. I knew the judge, Lancito, knew him as a district attorney. He's a very good district attorney. He's not going to allow cameras in the courtroom. Obvious, it's a no-brainer. And with all the talk going on, we'll get a gag order. No one is going to be able to talk about the evidence in this case unless it's produced. So we're in pretty good shape here. Well, guess what? I'm 0 for 2. I was wrong on both counts. He allows cameras in the courtroom, yet that allowed these defense attorneys to put on evidence before they'd even been presented in court 3 times a day to the media who's waiting outside, attacking witnesses before they've even testified, influencing people, the media included, with this jury that was sequestered. And I don't know what that did, whether the people thought that would work or not, it just didn't. So they opened this up to the world and they allowed all this to be brought out to an open media, but they allowed the attorneys to talk about this evidence. So there'd be a gag order. Well, I was wrong there too. There was no gag order. Well, let me correct that. There was a gag order. There were 2 people gagged in this case, me and my partner. Nobody else got gagged. We weren't the ones talking to the media. It was the attorneys who should have been gagged. Cameras in the courtroom, testimony and evidence, the way it was presented. The gag order allowed all the stuff to go out to the media before it had even been presented in court as evidence. 2 major, major mistakes in this trial. We knew we were on the road to destruction, and I spent 8 days on the stand. I had more problems with Marcia Clark on her direct examination than I did on Johnny Cochran's cross-examination because I didn't know where she was coming from. When I went on the stand, I was supposed to address evidence and introduce evidence that the police did. Her ideas and my ideas about how much evidence should have been presented varied. Like I said, there were 20-something pieces of evidence she should have put on that she never did, that I should have been able to introduce. You never have too much evidence in a murder case. It's as simple as that. You put on everything that you have. She didn't do it. She had her own ideas on how to discuss this. When I was being examined by her on the evidence that she did allow in, the jury, which is from me to you, 6 feet away, 8 feet away, They have notes and pads that they can write all the notes they want. They were just glaring at me, not staring, glaring. They didn't like me. LAPD on trial, no doubt. Rodney King all over again, no doubt. Whether it was justified or not, we're not talking about that. That's what this was the LAPD on trial. The folks in the jury wouldn't be writing anything down as I was admitting important pieces of evidence, some of it blood evidence. Yet when Johnny Cochran was crossing me about where I lived in a racist LAPD and blood being contaminated and lying cops, they were writing like crazy. Again, those 8 days, I knew this trial, it was never going to convict O.J. Simpson. I knew it all along. The prosecution had their game plan. They knew well that the LAPD was on trial. They were not going to rehabilitate LAPD witnesses, civilian or sworn. They got a chance to rehabilitate and recross. When they came back after the prosecution, after the defense dirties them up, they should rehabilitate those witnesses. They never did. They never put on all of this evidence, and we can go over this in detail if you want. There's not a problem. 10 days before she was murdered, Nicole tells her mom, "My keys are missing to my house." When OJ was here the other day, I think when he came to visit the kids, I think he stole them off of the hook we had in the kitchen. I think OJ has my keys. Well, what we find in OJ's pack that he took off with at the end of the pursuit, this big black bag where he had his cash, underwear, Hall of Fame ring, the passport, the gun, a disguise kit, he also had a set of keys. It was the keys that Nicole thought that he took, which eventually he did. So why would he take the keys to the house if he didn't want to use them to get in the house? It didn't say he's a murderer. It didn't mean he's a murderer. This is inculpatory stuff that says circumstantially, this is one of 25 pieces of circumstantial evidence to say he may have an ill intent getting back into that house. We didn't see any of that in trial. Why didn't you not see that in trial? Again, because the LAPD is on trial. Marcia knew it. The other attorneys, I don't think they went along with this. This is Marcia's decision. She's number one seat. She's handling the whole show. It wasn't Chris. She made all the decisions to not put this on because she did not want to appear in bed with the LAPD. That's why you didn't see this stuff. Because she knew damn well this jury despised the LAPD and it was the LAPD on trial. Now, if that's her strategy, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. But tell me about it and tell the rest of the people who are your witnesses what your plan is, because there's plenty of DNA evidence that could have found anybody guilty of murder in this case. The DNA evidence was overwhelming. Fine, but tell me if that's your strategy. She never did. She never rehabilitated me or anybody else, or she could have. Again, there's never too much evidence in a murder case. You have so much evidence. Any seasoned homicide cop, when they get a murder case, they look at the evidence. It's very, very rare in any murder case to find what we call exculpatory evidence. Now, what is exculpatory evidence? We'll go back to the shoes. When I took those Reeboks from O.J. Simpson, and he told me he was wearing them the night of the murders, and I took them to size them. If they were size 10, that would have been exculpatory evidence, because we know we have size 12 left by the suspect at the crime scene. So those shoes that, by his own admission, belonged to him were not the same. That's exculpatory. If I'm sitting in the jury, I would say, well, he wears size 10 and there's size 12 left by the suspects. He couldn't have committed the murders. Well, that wasn't true here because those Reeboks were size 12. That's what we mean by exculpatory evidence. Most murder cases have exculpatory evidence. This case had none. This case had no exculpatory evidence of a substantive nature. There's a lot of supposition, but supposition is not evidence. Okay? Evidence is evidence. I mentioned that earlier. You didn't have anything like that in this case. Very, very rare. All the blood evidence went one way. You've got Simpson's blood and the two victims' blood in the Bronco, the crime scene, at Rockingham. Everywhere. There's only 3 types of blood. The 2 victims and the 1 suspect. It's as simple as that.
Thoughts on Jill Shively's account and why that wasn't used?
Okay. Okay, Jill Shively was a young woman who was on her way to the Westwood Home Market the night of the murders. And she was traveling east on San Vicente, approaching Bundy.
I was heading east on San Vicente, trying to make it to Westward Ho by 11 p.m.
It was about 10:35, 10:40 in the evening on a Sunday evening, the night of the murders. She sees a white Bronco come out from the right side off of Bundy. She later identifies as O.J. Simpson driving, nearly runs into her.
And as I'm approaching Bundy is when I almost run into O.J. Simpson's Bronco. I would have probably seen the Bronco sooner, but there were no headlights on his car. I swerved to the right of me to miss him. He went up onto the median. There's a middle median right there to avoid hitting me. And I realized to avoid hitting a gray Nissan, also on San Vicente, heading west. So he had kind of both of us cornering him in. I'm staring at this person at the time. I didn't know who it was. And they're looking at me, glaring at me as if I had done something to them.
He yells and screams at her, something to this effect, and almost ran into her. I believe she said he went through a red light or something, or thought he'd gone through a red light. And she recognizes him. And when this happens, they exchange a little exchange, and then Simpson drives away. But he drives away, she gets the license number of his Bronco.
So as I'm looking at him, he sticks his hand out of his car and yells at the Nissan to move. So they moved 3 times, going the same direction. OJ would back up, the Nissan would back up. Instead of going forward the opposite direction. Finally, the Nissan backed up and OJ's Bronco took off north on Bundy. And his lights were still off. I remember seeing his brakes, tail lights, but his lights were still off. He didn't even turn them on. When he yelled, move, I realized who it was. It was OJ, because I had just seen the Naked Gun recent movie of him, and I recognized his voice.
Anyway, she calls this in, and one thing leads to another, and turns out that she would be a witness to O.J. Simpson fleeing from the direction where the murders occurred. Again, this doesn't say he's the murderer.
I made the phone call to report him as a drunk driver before midnight. I remember it was before midnight when I called in. I looked up the number. It was like I didn't call the 911, but I looked up West LA's LAPD phone number, and I think it was on Butler Avenue. And I called that number, and I called and reported him as a drunk driver. I know the last 3 numbers were 788. I can't remember if it was 3CWZ or 3CZW, but I said I have those numbers down. It was a white Bronco with shiny rims.
Even this is some pretty good circumstantial stuff. 2 blocks from the murder, going through a red light, almost running into her. Pretty good stuff. I think you want to see her as a witness, right? Well, we don't, because she sells her story to hard copy for like $5,000, which she doesn't even benefit from. That $5,000 goes to a lawyer who she has to hire to defend her from all these allegations.
Tom Lange was always good to me from the very start, him and Phil Vannatter. I loved them both. They were always my advocate. They stood up for me. They were always very good people. They stood up for me against Marcia a lot. And they couldn't understand why, she wasn't using me. They had run every background check they could ever run on someone.
Marcia decides not to use her because she was paid for her testimony. I can understand that under some circumstances, but here you use her regardless because it's very important. She's got him fleeing a murder scene. Besides, she want corroboration? She corroborates her own statement because she took a license number from the Bronco. How else would she have gotten the license number, which is the same one, from the Bronco if she hadn't seen OJ driving the car? It's so obvious. It doesn't matter if she got $1 million for her statement. She still saw the car because she gave us a license number. She corroborates her own statement. Why in the hell would you not use that? And there are so many other things during the trial that they should have put on. The man at the airport, okay? This is another head scratcher. We're in trial, and I'm at a break, and I'm back in my office. I believe it's in March. I think it's March. It's March of 1995, and we're in trial. We're on a break, and I get a phone call from a fella who says, I've been watching the trial. My name is Judas. Last name is Judas. I work downtown in the West LA area. And the night of the killings, he says, I was at the airport and I saw O.J. Simpson. And I saw him get out of a limousine. And when he got out of the limousine, I saw him standing by a trash container with a bag, and he's taking something out of the bag and putting it in the trash container. I said, hold on one second. The night of the murders, you saw Simpson at the airport? Yeah, he had a bag, yeah. Well, I'm aware of a bag because of Kato Kaelin's and the limo driver, Alan Park's testimony regarding a bag that hasn't been seen since OJ was left at the airport. That may have something in it that somebody could be interested in because of the way Simpson was being overprotective of it. That I got from Kato Kaelin earlier before the trial, as well as the limo driver. I asked him, I said, where are you right now? He says, I'm at work. I said, how far are you from the airport? He says, about 20 minutes. I say, right now, leave what you're doing, go directly to American Airlines. I'm going to meet you there. So, okay, fine. So I grab my partner, I grab a photographer, and we fly out to the airport, and he's waiting for us. I said, I want you to give us a walkthrough and statement now about exactly what you saw. So Mr. Junis tells us his wife works at American Airlines at the airport. He was there a little after 11 o'clock. He's parked in a small, low-profile, I think it was an MG, at the curb. He's the only one around. Nobody else is around. He's waiting for her. The limo pulls up and pulls in front of him. And he's sitting there, and there's nobody around, and he sees O.J. Simpson jump out of the limo. And then he sees the driver get out and come on, and a red cap comes out, and they start unloading stuff out of the car. He looks for his wife. It's after 11. And so he looks back around and towards the entrance, looking for his wife, who's working a little late, and she's running a little late. So he's a little concerned. He didn't see her. And he looks back around, he's fooling around, and he sees the red cap and the limo driver go inside with some golf clubs and a couple of bags. And Simpson is still outside. And Simpson is standing next to a trash container on the east side of the entranceway. Now there are two trash containers, one on either side. 44 inches high, four-sided, flat top. 4 ways to put trash in there with a flat top. He says he had this little half-moon-shaped travel bag on top of the trash container. And he removed something. He put his arm in the container, the little half-moon-shaped travel bag, and it looked to me like the bag was half-zipped when he did it. And he's bringing something out, and he put it in the trash container. Now, real quick, when this happened, and Mr. Junis sees this occur, the bodies had not even been discovered. No one knew that the crimes had occurred. He's just seeing this Simpson putting in there. He's saying, so what? He threw trash away. He then sees him zip up the half-moon-shaped travel bag, pick it up, and walk on inside. His wife comes. He goes home with his wife. Hey, just saw O.J. Simpson. All right, fine. The next morning it breaks, obviously, Monday morning, about the murders. O.J. Simpson's wife, and there was rumors about this, that, and the other. By now, the media has got a hold of the Browns, and I'm thanking God that I got a hold of them first because the media is all over it. They got a hold of Judith the Brown. Somebody from the media does the next morning. She talks to him, unfortunately. Says, yeah, I talked to Nicole last night, and she was at a restaurant having dinner, and this, that, and the other. And so that someone from the media asked her something to the extent of, well, what time is this? She says, oh, gosh, I don't know. She called here, and she's in shock. And the media are asking her direct questions. Her daughter has been slaughtered just hours before, and they're asking her questions. And again, I'm happy that I made that death notification first. She's saying it was about 10:30 or 10:45, somewhere in there. And she called and said that she'd left her glasses there. And so we got a hold of the waiter there at the restaurant, and they're talking this, that, and the other about the glasses, and they found the glasses and all this. The media runs with this. They find out that Nicole was alive at 10:40 or 10:45 because she talked to her mother. When this happened, as soon as this comes out in the media, Mr. Junis heard this come out in the media. He gets on the phone. Who does he call? Not me. He calls the defense. He says, his name, he says, I was there and I saw OJ there, and he tells him the whole story. He says, I saw him with this bag. He put something in there. He says, and I heard later that the murders must have occurred about 11 or 10:50 or so. So OJ couldn't have done it because he was at the airport just after 11. I just wanted to tell you that. Well, he was talking to a defense investigator who I happen to know, which kind of two-faced, and I'll leave it at that. He says, fine, thank you, Mr. Jones. We'll be right back to you. We'll get right back to you. Well, you think they ever called him back? Hell no, they didn't call him back. Why would they? This is a prosecution witness. What was in that bag? We get into the trial. Mr. Junis is also watching the trial. He hears now about that there's a bag that Kato Kaelin was concerned about that fits the description of the bag he saw Simpson stick his arm in, take something out, and put it in a trash container. He calls me and tells me all this. This is 9 months after this happens. What chance do we have of finding anything? Subsequently, we find out 9 months later, there are 2 common landfills, 3 pickups daily. What are the chances of us finding anything that may or may not have been into that half-moon-shaped travel bag? That's the same bag that Simpson had in the driveway at Rockingham that Kato went to pick up to put in the limo on his way to the airport. That Simpson, no, I'll take care of that. I'll take care of the bag. Don't worry about it. We've never found that bag. Is anybody the slightest bit curious as to what Simpson may have been doing at the airport with his hand in a half-zipped bag, removing an item that Mr. Junis did not see and does not know what was, removing it and putting it into this trash container? And the bag never being, I went all the way back to Chicago, we looked for this. But if I found other stuff in Chicago we can get into too that wasn't admitted into evidence. Do we want this guy's statement? Yeah. I go to Marcia. I'm all excited. I don't get excited much. But I said, we're in trial. Nobody knows where the shoes are, the Bruno Mali's, the knife, bloody clothing. Where's all this stuff? I said, I got a guy, and I go through the whole thing. That's where the bag that Kato was talking about, the bag, Simpson had the bag. He probably took it to Chicago with him or dumped it somewhere in another container. But this is good stuff. Again, is this means a murder? No. Do you want to hear this? What happened to the knife, the shoes, maybe, or bloody clothing? Marcia looks at me and said, well, yeah, but we can't corroborate it. At first, I thought she was joking. She wasn't joking. She says, well, it's a one-on-one. One-on-one? Yeah, but this is a guy that was there. He's a good witness. He's not a criminal. He's got no reason to lie to us. He saw the bag, and he saw Simpson remove something from the bag and put in a trash container. Circumstantial as you can get. But so what? This, and with everything else, this is a really good witness. No, I'm not going to use him because it's just one-on-one. Real quick, going back, I think about 20 minutes ago, you alluded to a show I did 2 years ago about the evidence not used. And you alluded to Alan Park, the limo driver. During that show 2 years ago, it was just 2 years ago, I'm interviewing Alan Park. He tells me about his time at the airport. He says, yeah, he says, you know, we talked about that bag that Simpson didn't want us near, and he must have had something in the bag. You know, nobody's ever found it, right? I said, yeah, right. And I said, you know, we had the witness that we interviewed about that, and she didn't want to use him. He says, yeah, I could never understand that. He says, because when I drove away in a limo, I saw Simpson standing there with the bag. I said, wait a minute. You saw the bag on the trash container with Simpson in the bag standing there? He says, yeah. And I said, Alan, did you ever tell that to Marcia? Well, sure, I told them. I told her all about it. And what did she say? She said, well, okay, but we're not going to use it, or something to that effect. There's your corroboration. It's not a one-on-one. Alan Park corroborates exactly what Judah says. They corroborate one another. You have a corroborating witness now to this very important witness. So she lied to me. She had Alan Park as a corroborating witness. It was not a one-on-one. You have this type of stuff, you want to use this stuff. I couldn't believe it. This is just 2 years ago, which is 28 years after this murder. I find out another thing that went awry and that should have used and didn't. Every time you talk to somebody, it seems that there's something else. This should have been used in the trial and never was.
Why was he over at the AC unit to bump the unit?
Oh,
drop
now,
it if the blood trail does go from the Bronco up. So
good point. Right. Okay.
You said you have an air conditioning unit in a hole in the wall?
Yes.
Was it in the same wall that the air conditioning unit was in?
Yes.
Was it near the air conditioning unit that the thumb seemed to come from?
Yes.
And when Foreman's interviewing him, he says, well, he's lying in bed. He feels a thump on the wall behind him. And he thinks maybe there's an earthquake. So he tells this to Furman. And when the limo driver shows up, Kato shares this with Alan Park, the limo driver. He says, do we have an earthquake? And Park says, no, I don't think an earthquake we had. So Furman goes back there, as he should. He did the right thing in going back there to see what could cause this noise back here. And he finds this narrow walkway that I described, which is pitch black. You can't see anything. And this huge air conditioning unit sticking out directly behind Kato's wall, where Kato's bed is. I mean, it's only inches away, but you'd have to go through the wall. And this glove that he finds is right beneath the air conditioning unit. Now, how did it get there? Again, I've told you what's behind this bungalows. If you were to walk on that walk all the way back, this is what I will theorize, and anybody can take it the way they want. But when Simpson returns, he's in a hurry. Obviously, he's in a hurry because he got a limo waiting for him to take him to the airport. He has things like at least one bloody glove, because we know there's a left bloody glove at the crime scene. He has a right bloody glove, perhaps shoes, perhaps clothing that he has changed. He goes upstairs and he does this really quick because he knows the limo's out there. He can see the limo through the Ashford gate when he enters, and he answers the phone when the limo driver calls in. He runs upstairs, gets his stuff together, and now he's stuck with a bloody glove, clothing, shoes. What's he going to do with this stuff? How about I dump it in the back where I dump everything else until I get back from Chicago late tomorrow. I'll take care of it then. He goes downstairs with this stuff. He goes into this lot, and Simpson's a big guy. Big bone, husky guy. If you're going to walk through that narrow walkway, he's got to be very close because you're going to bump into the wall. You may bump into the fence. It's dark. He can't see the air conditioning unit sticking out, but he's going down this narrow walkway. And he knows he's going to the end where I told you all the junk is, and the abandoned wheelbarrow and shovels and tires. So he's walking with this stuff, and he bumps into the air conditioner. Well, just on the other side of the wall, inches away, is Kato on the phone with his girlfriend. So he moves around, but as he bumps into there, he inadvertently drops the right glove. He gets stuck. I can't get through here. He doesn't realize he dropped the glove. Otherwise, he'd have picked it up, obviously. So he goes back out. He finds this little bag, and he stuffs the rest of the stuff into the bag. That's where we get the bag from. And he takes that. Again, he's in a hurry doing all this stuff. He probably doesn't even realize that he's dropped that glove. Now, we know he's lost the glove at Bundy because he stopped and turned around to look for it, and it's not on his hand that's still bleeding. All of this stuff comes together, but it's never put on. The timeline is perfect as to when this occurred. Jill Shively would have filled in the timeline perfectly. You didn't see her there at all. Because, again, this is LAPD on trial. When you investigate a murder, because you file a murder case, it doesn't mean the investigation over. In fact, many times it's just beginning. This thing went on for months. We investigated this case throughout this trial, putting various things together, presenting them to Marcia to put on as evidence, thereby strengthening the case. Granted, it's all circumstantial. Circumstantial is good enough evidence. It's really good when you got 20, 22 or 23 pieces of it with nothing exculpatory. This stuff should have all been put on. None of it was put on because Marcia realized this was LAPD on trial. She didn't do anything to rehabilitate much of the witnesses, such as Kato, who was a very important witness. In fact, she calls him a hostile witness and interviewed him under those conditions that he was hostile. He wasn't hostile. He was a very important witness to this whole case, and you saw him treated as a hostile witness. Somebody calls you a hostile witness, and you're going to act hostile. And that was all done terribly. She handled this done terribly because her agenda, she knew what was in the LAPD was on trial. She didn't want to appear to be in bed with the evidence in the LAPD, so this is how she acted towards this whole investigation. Everybody else was a pleasure to work with. Chris did a very good job. This nonsense with the gloves and the gloves didn't fit. All it comes down to it was another red herring. The gloves did fit. They're just not going to fit someone who's wearing latex underneath them. I don't care if you have the smallest hands in humanity, you're not going to get on leather gloves if you're wearing latex underneath them. There's also the shrinkage factor, and you don't let someone in front of a jury and 60 million people demonstrate that he can't get the gloves on. That was all handled very poorly. Again, that's the problem with cameras in the courtroom. That particular demonstration should have happened in chambers with the judge and the attorneys. Anyone with the slightest bit of common sense knows that if you have shrinked up gloves that are stiff and you're wearing latex underneath, it's almost an impossibility. In fact, I don't know how you'd get them on if you wanted to. In any way, it's ridiculous that ever happened. So Chris was falsely accused. The only thing that he may have done differently is don't do it in front of a jury and a live television audience, because that exactly what would happen happened. I wrote a book called Evidence Dismissed. It was a bestseller, went all the way to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. I didn't want to write it at first, but an agent from New York came all the way out to try to talk me into it. And that's not what cops like to do is talk about their cases. But when you're lied about, when you're used, when people lie about evidence that you found, when people falsely accuse you of things like racism, planting evidence, lying about things, such as some defense attorneys did in this case, you've got to do something. You got to stand up. When a cop comes on the stand and pleads the fifth when he didn't have to, and rolls over, blames you, points fingers, you get pissed. I wanted my story put into print, and it was, and under evidence dismissed. Years later, I wrote a postscript bringing everybody up to date on nearly 20 years after the case, in the 4th edition of Evidence Dismissed. I'm as proud of that book, and I feel as strongly of that book today, if not more so, because of all the nonsense that came out today that I did in 1997 when it was originally written. But I'm just glad that agent talked me into writing that book, because that afforded me an opportunity and my partner to tell the real story about what truly happened in this particular case, the Simpson case, because all of this is in there, and it's explained to the nth degree. I mean, we lay everything out exactly the way it happened. Well, as far as my perspective on humanity, I'm not bitter. I got bitter when I got back from Vietnam. I'll just say that and get rid of that right now. And that lasted for a while. But again, we're getting into politics, and I won't do that, but I'm very bitter of the way of that war and the way it was handled, and the politicians that caused it to handle, and to this day still are doing that. Pisses me off. Like, you probably wouldn't understand, but maybe you do, because a lot of people are still around it. We're involved in that. But as far as any humanity to man, it exists. It always has. There's a reason for that. Like there's a reason for everything in life. I don't know what that reason is, but I respected my job. I'd like to think that I was doing something for humanity and trying to solve these things. I'd like to think I was on the right side of history in this case and all of the others. That's why I write the books. That's why I do these interviews, because I respect that. I respect the law. And I think sometimes people forget that there's a reason we're all here. And maybe they ought to give that a little deeper thought.